name is Evie Baker, and I'm going to read The Fall by myself. An angel, yes, an angel who had fallen from heaven, landing in the depths of a deep, dark forest. Thankfully, she landed in a pile of hay, embracing her. No injuries, except a deep cross across her forehead. Her feathers were muffled, and her hair was battered with hay and blood. The towering trees loomed over her presence, forbidding any light to pass through. The forest stretched for miles in every direction. You may think, why would an angel be in a setting like this? Well, she was thrown down to earth for her own safety. Who threw her? Her parents. In order to protect her from being pierced by the devil, her parents sent her to this atmosphere, and they were executed shortly after. She was yet to know where she was. She was yet to know that she was lost within this dark place called Earth. She awakened, her bright eyes exposed to this new environment. Blood trickled down her fragile face. She shuffled within the engulfing pile of fresh hay, sitting up slowly as pieces of the sweet straw fell from her dark matted hair. Ray had no recall of what had happened and how she had ended up in this darkened forest. Silence covered the air like a blanket. Where am I? Mum? Dad? She muttered, scanning her surroundings. She sniffled, unsure and scared of this place that seemed darker than hell. The silence was broken. The sudden distant sound of thundering hooves of horses grew rapidly louder. Her gentle breathing increased into panting. What was this threatening sound? Hunters. Hunters in search of young Ray. She caught a glimpse of their sharp weapons and threatening expressions before spreading her muffled wings and fleeing from the storm. The thundering hooves grew closer and closer as Ray's wings grew weaker and weaker. She meandered through the towering trees and the sharpened spears that were trying to pierce her. The roaring voices were beneath her. Ray could not escape any longer. She knew that eventually her wings would give in, and they did. The swift gliding turned into falling as she collapsed in a pile of damp leaves. The hoofs came to a stop, their chains rattling at their sudden halt. The hunters dismounted their steeds. Ray could hear the threatening sound of spears being drawn. Her heart sank. She briskly shuffled in the leaf pile in an attempt to escape, but it was too late. The hunters surrounded her, positioning their spears at the winged creature shaking in front of them. Ray's eyes widened, and she panted heavily. The young angel pushed herself against a tree, blocking her escape as she trembled with fear. What do you want from me? Ray cried out. Silence, you monster, one of the hunters bellowed. Monster? She muttered. I said silence. The hunter hurled their spear, piercing it through Ray's wing. She let out a shriek of pain, with the blood gushing out of the wound. The hunter lifted Ray by the neck and took out a freshly sharpened dagger. She whimpered. Silence, he yelled, and he sliced her bare skin. She cried out again. Another hunter began chaining Ray's limbs together. She did not dare to make another sound. The pain was already a heavy burden. They mounted her to the tree, hanging her by the frail bones of her wings. The 5 hunters all gathered around her. Everyone wielded a dagger. Slash and slash. They each drew blood from the cut of her chained limb. Tears streamed down the young angel's face. She was slowly losing the will to fight back. Would she be saved, or would she continue to suffer with this torture? Her breathing grew slower, and the dagger still nipped her flesh. Ray's limbs were coated with layers of her dripping blood, staining her worn-down clothes. She could feel the daggers digging closer to her bones. It was too painful for her to fight for her life. At this point, Ray was giving in to her death. Maybe sending her from heaven was pointless. The eternal slumber was coming from within the reach. The young angel had her eyes shut while the hunters cut away at her bloody flesh. But what was that faint sound she heard? It almost sounded like the twinkle of a fairy, although it was surely impossible for mythical creatures to be on Earth. It was indeed a twinkle, growing louder by the second. Ray used the last of her strength to look along the stretched pathway of the forest. There, looming silently behind the hunters, was a hooded being. They wielded what seemed to be a long branch with a glow on top. A staff? Ray's vision was too blurred to know what this mysterious being was. Were they the one to save the angel from her torture, or was this a second enemy that also planned to execute her? Their clothing was dark, matted, although it wasn't as damaged as Ray's. The young angel could slightly make out a face. It was wrinkled and capped with a mass of grey hair. It seemed to be an elderly woman. She lifted her twisted staff, and with a single thud to the forest floor, the hunter slowly began to fade into nothing. It was a miracle. Ray couldn't process what had happened in that split second, but she knew that she was safe once again. The elderly woman carefully removed the chains from her limbs and took her in their arms. "It's okay, young one. I'm here to protect you from all the beasts in this vile world." Ray was then brought to a shack located in the center of the forest. A small gap in the tree shone upon a place where the elderly woman lived. This area of the forest was more aesthetically pleasing than its surroundings. Animals thrived and freshly bloomed flowers stood proudly. It was a shock to Ray as a young white-haired girl approached her swiftly. Her eyes were a vibrant purple that shone purely. "Is this the angel you were talking about, Grandma?" the girl yelled in excitement. "Calm down, dear. The poor thing almost died out there." "Sorry, Grandma." Ray was gently rested onto a professionally made bed, where the girl loomed over her whilst holding her hand out. "I'm Slive." Ray weakly rested her hand in Slive's. "Ray. Oh, that's a pretty name." The young angel was already feeling warmth in this place, with Slive and Grandma, where she would be welcomed the most.